Hello everyone and welcome to this Green Building Pro online event series broadcast, Building Information Modeling, Just How Green Will the Standard Be? This webcast is brought to you by Green Building Pro and is sponsored by SourceCore Professional Services. I'm Mitchell Funk and I'm an editor with Green Building Pro. I'll be your moderator for today's webcast. In a few moments, both Deke Smith and Brigitte Foster will join us to discuss the process of building information modeling and the push now for a National BIM Standard. Before that, however, I want to go over a few housekeeping details. I hope you enjoy our new live cast event platform. We've developed this platform to showcase events of all kinds to our attendees today. And one of the first things you'll notice down below is an event chat box. Here's where you'll be able to send questions to the presenters during the presentation, and we'll have a live Q&A portion at the end where they'll be able to answer them. You'll also be able to chat with other attendees during the live presentation as well to get a good idea of the flow. You'll also notice there's a pop-out button in the bottom right as well, and this will allow you to undock the chat window so it's not obscured by any slides, give you a better view. Speaking of that, we also have an ability to enlarge the slides if you'd like a better view. You hover your mouse over this center video screen and a full screen icon will show up. Click that and it will blow up the slide screen so you can get a better idea of what's going on. We'd like to share your attendance with the community today, and you may see the rolling Twitter feed down at the bottom right here where you can share your comments with everyone. When you are tweeting, make sure to use the GBExpo hashtag so everyone knows where you are and can join in. If you do need a copy of today's PDF slides, you can do so at any time by clicking the Resources tab on the right-hand side. This is available for you at any time. And in addition, a copy of this entire video presentation, including the Q&A, will be available shortly after the presentation. With that, I'd like to introduce both Deke Smith and Brigitte Foster. Deke Smith is Executive Director of the Building Smart Alliance, and Brigitte Foster is the Assisting Director of the Building Smart Alliance. We're very happy to have them with us today, and I'd like to turn it over to you two. Thank you.
I would like to thank you for joining Brigitte Foster and myself today for this webinar. My name is Deke Smith. I'm the Executive Director of Building Smart Alliance and a member of the Building Smart International Executive Committee. Brigitte is the Assisting Director and works in the Facilities Department of Sandia National Laboratory. Building Smart Alliance is the North American chapter of Building Smart International and is a council of the National Institute of Building Sciences. Building Smart International is a coalition of nearly 50 countries around the world seeking interoperability between software using open BIM standards. Today we are going to provide you with an overview of BIM and the efforts underway to deliver the National BIM Standard, as well as some information as to how you can help our efforts to ensure that the National BIM Standard is green. The Institute was established by Congress in 1974 and was funded for the first 3 years. Then it became a 501c3 nonprofit organization. The primary role of the Institute was to build a bridge between the private and public portions of the facilities industry. The Institute is a unique and respected organization that represents all aspects of the industry. It is the perfect setting to create an alliance to transform the facilities industry. The Institute is also unique in that it has a report that goes to the President of the United States each year, and 6 of its board of directors are elected by the President and approved by the Senate. The Institute may be best known for its online facilities resource, the Whole Building Design Guide. The WBDG now has over 5 million unique document downloads a month. The Institute is also the home of the National CAD Standard, now preparing to release its next edition in April of this year. The National CAD Standard Project Committee is also a project of Building Smart Alliance. We are now working to deliver the first consensus version of the National BIM Standard. The first document laid the groundwork for this effort underway to develop version 2. Your support helps deliver no-cost open BIM standards, education, and information to the entire facilities industry using print, web, presentations, and portals. Although, as everyone knows, nothing is free. Our goal is to pre-fund our efforts in order to make implementation easier and hopefully faster. However, this is where you come in. Your support of the Institute allows us to produce these services. We need some serious resources, either through sponsorships or funding of specific projects in order to make this vision a reality.
Some view BIM as CAD on steroids, but nothing could be further from the truth. CAD only addressed one phase of the facility lifecycle, design, and only one workflow process, drafting. It didn't really cause us to change our business practices, though. BIM, on the other hand, can have an impact to all phases of a facility's lifecycle, but that requires us to change our business processes to truly accomplish our primary goal of entering data one time and reusing it. Even more importantly, build an electronic model and then build to the model. Unlike CAD, BIM is full of embedded information which can be shared with other facilities applications. Think of the possibilities such as combining geospatial data with model data. Then the model, along with its data, could even end up being more valuable than the building itself. There's so much opportunity to share data, but we need open standards to make this a reality. People often think of BIM as only a design tool, which produces 3D models with stored building information. Well, BIM is more than just a product. It's also a collaborative process intended to improve business processes with open information standards, which will allow for more automated capabilities, ensuring information fidelity and sustainability. But BIM is even more important as a tool for effective facility lifecycle management. It can help create seamless information exchanges and workflows which can be repeatable, verifiable, and sustainable. So look at BIM not only as being a product, such as an output of a software application, but also as a new collaborative process to improve workflows in the office as well as in the field. And finally, as a facilities management tool, assisting people who manage and maintain our facilities over their life cycle. One of the main premises of BIM is to enter data once, then share it. In our traditional way of doing business, we work in vertical silos, and there's a lot of information lost during handoffs from one project phase to the next. We need for information to travel horizontally through the industry. In order for that to happen, BIM needs to be seen as a common repository for information, essentially the foundation for which all activities can draw from, whether it's for life cycle costing, energy conservation, or green building analysis. Although these activities need similar building data to solve issues related to their interests, they are unable to use the same information source simply because they often use different terminology. Industry needs to recognize that without a standard language for communicating building information, the model data will never be used to its full potential. The Alliance has several projects which are addressing this need for a common dictionary, but we need your support. Help us determine what green data elements could be provided in the model.
BIM could be renamed Built Environment Information Model and probably be more accurate, as it does cover the entire built environment. It also now interfaces with geospatial information systems. Hence, this hierarchy developed by the Open Geospatial Consortium, GSA, General Services Administration, Open Standards Consortium for Real Estate, and ourselves becomes extremely valuable, especially to large portfolio holders. What it shows is how information can be rolled up from the smallest part on the right-hand side of the drawing to the entire world view on the left-hand side of the drawing. The key point to remember is that you can always summarize detailed information, but the opposite is not true. If you only collect information at the macro level, then every time someone wants additional information, they need to do a data call. When I worked for the Department of Defense and we had a portfolio of 570,000 facilities, you can only imagine how long that took and how inaccurate the information was, because typically we only had a few hours to respond. So everyone had to estimate, and therefore we could never have truly accurate information. This hierarchy allows one to capture both facility and geospatial information and works very similarly to the way Google Earth allows you to zoom into a location. Continuing with our look at the scope of BIM, we see that there are many ways we can use information stored in BIM. In this first view, we see that it's used for structural design. In this view, we see pictures merged with models to better depict existing conditions in a renovation project. You can build your models from existing facilities as you do work on renovation or additions, and therefore collect it over time. If you have existing facilities, you can make the decision today that you're going to use BIM from this day forward. Then start a BIM for each facility in your portfolio. The Coast Guard did this and had what they called BIM blobs, as in their asset database they knew square footage and nothing else. Over time, about 20 years, they now have very accurate BIMs for most of their facilities. They are one of the few I know with that range of vision, however. In this next example, we scan an existing mechanical room and create a point cloud for that space. From that, we can create a 3D model. Some software tools now can recognize various objects and can suggest some information to begin to build a true BIM. This graphic shows an example of integration with BIM and GIS. Our fall edition of JBIM focused on the integration of these two information streams working in the cloud. There's tremendous opportunity in this capability, but also a fresh set of problems. We need to tighten up security and add metadata to our model building. This is a task that needs to be done in any scenario if we are going to share and trust information that flows through the model and between stakeholders. Being responsible for one's actions can accurately be tracked in a model. Who did what, when, and for the life of the facility should be of primary interest. We talk a lot today about sustainability, but we're also a long ways away from sustainability at this point. This must be a primary discussion in the construction industry because far and away we are the largest consumers of raw materials on the face of the planet. Improving the judicial way designers use materials will have the greatest impact. Lean construction techniques will also begin to reduce the waste. While we talk a lot about sustainability, we must not be very effective, because I see very few life cycle costing tools available today. We primarily make decisions about initial costs, but rarely look at the long-term impact of those decisions, largely because we don't have the tools. This was highlighted in the AEC-001 testbed completed in 2009. The question also has to be asked about the end of life of a facility. How much of it ends up in landfill, and how much of it ends up being recycled in a new facility? Don't get me wrong, we are making some right decisions in moving to alternative forms of energy, but we are also not really addressing the chart in the upper right-hand corner just yet. We have a lot of challenges, including better use of water. This is a resource that many take for granted, while over 40% of the world's population does not have potable water to drink. The actions we take today will have lasting effect on our children and our grandchildren. We need energy to accomplish almost everything we do, whether it be building new facilities or occupying them. We must learn to be far more sustainable than we are today.
We have to look at our facilities with a vision of full life cycle responsibility. When you look at the activities BIM is involved in from a life cycle perspective, you could break it down into what is shown in this graphic. Often BIM starts at the programming stage, but it doesn't have to. You can bring BIM in at any phase. During conceptual or detailed design phases, the BIM data can be used for analysis for optimizing the building. BIM can also be provided as part of the construction documents for the contractors, who will use BIM for prefabrication, scheduling 4D, cost estimating 5D, even site logistics for determining laydown areas, crane locations, and emergency egress routes. Finally, the owner can use BIM for their O&M activities and even into future renovation or demolition projects. But we're also finding other non-traditional activities which could benefit from BIM data as well as the virtual model. For instance, management briefings, condition assessments, space utilization. Under laws and regulations, we're starting to see building code checking programs emerging. We even have the ability to perform simulations with BIM for lighting, sound, insulation, and firewalls. Procurement practices. We'll start seeing bidding documents, no more 2D drawings, just give them the model. The bottom line, business as usual is just not an acceptable option anymore. Here's Lyle sifting through his pile of contractor-delivered O&M manuals and as-built drawings. in search of a user's manual for a piece of equipment. Look familiar? Is this really how we want to continue to do work? With new technologies like BIM, we can change our business as usual.
Building Smart has long had this logo. We have now put names on each of the interlocking squares. Names that are not necessarily the traditional life cycle phases, but represent the entire industry just the same. We can identify successes in nearly every quadrant today, but we are not yet linking them together. That is our challenge, to create an information flow from inception onward to include the occupants. Our goal is to build a complete electronic model of the building or facility, work out all the problems, then build the building from the model. The model must be a true representation of the facility ultimately produced. In fact, we should expect that the model should be more informative than the building itself. There are significant complexities in today's facilities that must be represented accurately. If we fail to do that, then those issues will only come up in the field, often after concrete has been placed or steel has been fabricated. As we know, it is far more expensive to fix a problem at that point in time. The model should also be able to accurately predict the performance of the final product. I recently visited a facility in London South Bank University. The Center for Efficient and Renewable Energy in Buildings uses this metered and sensored building to teach facility management to students. They can use the rooftop laboratory to test different products such as photovoltaic panels and can see how the facility performs. There is a large dashboard in the classroom on the top floor, as well as windows in the mechanical spaces and in the floor to see underfloor reheat units. This way they can completely understand how the facility operates and record its performance. My proposal would be build a BIM of this facility. Then you could test various software analysis tools and predict the performance of the facility and then accurately verify that analysis by looking at the performance metrics. We need this kind of feedback to test our analysis tools, but this would be an easy place to start. Is anyone interested in funding a laboratory such as this? If we are serious about all these ideas and issues, we need that type of facility. There are certainly some facilities in the United States that are sensored and metered, and that we should be able to set up similar test beds. We need a variety of facilities that the software vendors could all use. Prefabrication will be a significant tool that will ultimately put us in a position to assemble instead of build buildings one piece at a time. Prefabrication allows us to build in parallel and not sequentially as we do now. Certainly savings in time of the delivery of each facility will be achieved using this technique. This is the Miami Valley Hospital in Ohio, a Skanska project. Here modules can be assembled off-site in parallel and then delivered pre-tested to the job site just in time for installation. This is the facility where the modules were assembled and stored until they were ready to be delivered. The facility is well lighted and environmentally comfortable. In an environment such as this, productivity naturally improves. In fact, pipe fitters on this project installed 650 linear feet of pipe a day instead of the typical 200 linear feet a day. It is also safer and there's less waste. In addition, waste is not commingled as it would be on a typical job site. Therefore, materials can be easily recycled.
What BIM is able to do is create a much safer work environment both during construction and occupancy. Using BIM to facilitate off-site prefabrication and modularization promotes safer, cleaner job sites by reducing trip hazards of stored material and also by the noticeable reduction in waste. In all, an improved working environment for the safety of the contractors. From an operational perspective, modeling also helps owners understand how people will occupy, operate, and maintain facilities to reduce hazards for the life of the facility.
While we have reportedly reached the tipping point with BIM, we are nowhere near the level of potential that this approach will bring to the industry. We need to do a far better job of adding the I to BIM information. collecting information is difficult, especially the way we do it today. Today, typically, all information is generated or captured early in its development electronically. However, we have a nasty habit of converting this information to less usable format, such as printing it on paper or even converting it to PDF. We need to keep the information usable. Many industries, especially in the logistics community, have gotten to this point. You can now easily track a package across the country until it is delivered to your front door. However, banking, medical, and many other industries have made the transition to the information age also. We've not quite gotten there yet. One of the products working to make this happen is the Specifiers Property Information Exchange, SPIE. The Institute is asking product manufacturing associations to build templates of the attributes that should be collected from each manufacturer constituent. These templates will be made available on the whole building design guide. Then those manufacturers will populate the templates. This information can then be delivered to tools such as the Construction Operations Building Information Exchange, COBE. This is somewhere where the green community can get directly involved and lobby the manufacturers associations to ensure that they include green attributes. By joining the Institute and the Alliance, we can accomplish this goal. In this example, the National Electrical Manufacturers Association, NECA, is demonstrating how one of their manufacturers, General Electric, is able to deliver open BIM information in the form of IFC, IFC XML, and standard PDF. Incidentally, Industry Foundation Class, or IFC, is one of the ISO standards Building Smart is delivering to the industry with your support. And quite frankly, we could use more support for this, as the United States is not currently even represented on this ISO committee. We are relying on our Building Smart associates internationally to support the effort of turning IFCs into ISO 16739.
By considering the owner's maintenance goals during the design stage, we are essentially adopting a design for maintenance strategy. It starts by getting people to rethink the responsibility one has at the design phase. It pushes the designer to go beyond just collaborating with contractors for constructability, but further into the life cycle of the facility, and to ensure that the 100+ year life is thought of for the single facility as well as the planet. We need to understand what the final product really looks like, including all the parts. Then we need to understand how it will be maintained. Like in a mechanical room, can people get in there and work safely? In a 2D world, it's very hard to adequately evaluate if there's enough room to work around a piece of equipment. Not all the components are shown together. In this example, what I call not maintenance friendly, it's hard for the technicians to get to these pumps in case of a failure, much less for their scheduled maintenance activity. This second example is what I call maintenance friendly. This is a good installation with plenty of room to access the equipment. But how can BIM help us solve this age-old problem of designs which provide inadequate access for proper maintenance activities to be performed safely? With BIM, the design team can see all the components around the equipment, properly scaled. Then, using an avatar, we can validate to the owner that there is enough room for the operations and maintenance teams to perform routine and unscheduled maintenance. This type of maintenance evaluation, conducted during the design phase, could then become a deliverable to the owner.
This seems to be continuously an objective just out of reach, yet it is critical to achieving most of what we have talked about thus far. We are moving ahead with a National BIM Standard version 2, and I have every confidence that we will produce a product this year. What will be included in that is up to you. If the green community is not involved, then this version of the standard will not be green. It's totally up to you. The train has left the station, but there is still time to get on board, because we do not start accepting ballots until March. But there is a lot of work required to submit a ballot that the rest of the facilities industry will understand and will be able to vote on. But not to worry too much. We will likely start another version of the standard next year to add more domains. Clearly, the industry is moving in the right direction. Here is a rather strong statement of policy from the American Institute of Architects. Other associations are issuing similar statements of policy. States are also beginning to demand open BIM standards. Wisconsin was the first, and as with any pioneer, the road has not always been easy, but they are sticking to their guns and making advances. Ohio has also come out with a document that recently completed its review period, so should be coming out in final form very soon. The Alliance has a copy of this document posted under News on the front page. The final document will be in the library of the Whole Building Design Guide once we receive it. One interesting aspect of this document is that it moves more of the designer's fee earlier in the schedule of payments if they use BIM. This is the definition of BIM that has become most widely accepted throughout the industry. It does address the scope of BIM from several directions. You notice it talks about the physical and functional characteristics of a facility, as well as it being a reliable basis for decisions of the life cycle from inception onward. The definition goes on to say what is expected when you use open standards to achieve interoperability. In this world of expecting instant results, this is not one of those things that will yield instant results, no matter how hard one tries. Let's take a look at what goes into a standard. Let's assume that today we come up with the best idea since sliced bread for the facilities industry. We believe it will save 50% of the cost and 50% of the time of a project's delivery. First of all, there's never been an idea that's so good that somebody doesn't hate. So we need to socialize the idea and get some other folks involved in supporting the idea. If we get enough traction, then maybe some software vendor will pick it up. Then they will schedule it for inclusion in a future year project. This delay can also be 1 or 2 years until the next development sequence starts. So now they have to develop and test the idea. Then they produce and distribute it. Then people need to learn how to use it, or even know that it exists through marketing. Then a project manager needs to decide to take the chance and use it on a project. Then it takes a while to prove itself and produce results. And darn if it didn't cut 50% of the cost and 50% of the time, just as we expected. But people say, well, it worked on that project, but will it work on other projects? Once we have several examples that it might work, then we can submit it for inclusion in the standard. So our challenge is to figure out ways to shorten the process. There are some things that we can do, but typically they are more to prove a capability than deliver a final product. But do not despair. Many products have been in this chain for some time, and we are now to a point where we can start standardizing some of those capabilities. There's a guaranteed long stream of products coming down the development tube at any point in time. So, just how big is this target of opportunity? The U.S. design and construction is approximately $1.288 trillion a year. In 2004, Construction Industry Institute and Lean Construction Institute developed this chart indicating that there's approximately 26% waste or non-value-added effort in the manufacturing environment, while in the construction industry that number was more on the order of 57%. If you just take the delta between these two numbers of 31%, that equals almost $400 billion annually. That is money that could be better spent on infrastructure renewal or in process improvements. Yet, to date, we have only invested approximately $1 to $2 million on open BIM standards through the Alliance over the past 3 years. To me, it does not sound like we're serious about fixing the problem. Or maybe the problems are so deeply embedded in the way we do work that we don't even think we have a problem. How much will it cost? While we will fine-tune these numbers over the next few months, we are estimating that it will cost in the neighborhood of $25 million to put a good base of model views or business processes in place. This is a one-time cost, although updates will certainly occur after the initial effort. We are basing this on the need for approximately 64 business processes as identified in the tetralogy. Thus far, the business models we have cost approximately $400,000 each to develop. I expect that some will cost less and some will cost more over time. To develop the central support to coordinate and develop the standards, it will require $5 million annually over the next few years. While most of the standards work will be volunteer and in-kind or specifically contracted efforts outside our core competency, there also has to be positions funded to coordinate.
Yes, $5 million is a lot of money, but when you consider that the savings from just one BIM project often exceeds that amount, it's not such a large number. At the University of Southern California's College of Cinematic Arts, in their second phase of the project, they came in $6.4 million under budget and also delivered 4 months early. Watch for our upcoming publication of the Journal of BIM, JBIM, where we will be discussing the cost of not using BIM. There will be case studies with savings metrics, discussion on how BIM can be used as a risk management tool. I'll have an article on my design for maintenance strategy, and there'll be more views on lifecycle and BIM. The spring issue is due out this April, and if you join the Alliance, you will receive a free copy in the mail. But you can also look at past issues from the Whole Building Design Guide website. Down at the bottom of this page is the location of the most recent JBIM, as well as a link to the recently revamped Whole Building Design Guide BIM library, where we highly recommend you check it out as a resource for material on BIM. The library material is sorted out using the lifecycle logo Deke spoke about earlier. If you select any one of the links, it will send you to a page like this. In this case, this is what you would find under Procure. You'll see various resources which you can sort by title, date, or even type. We encourage you to go to the Whole Building Design Guide site and look through the library.
So today we're asking you to do several things. First, join the Alliance. If you are able, to consider a sponsorship, either of the Alliance or of a specific project. If you want to be part of NBIMS effort, then sign up for the project committee. Also, stay informed by signing up for JBIM. It's free. For additional information, please read my book, as well as Chuck Eastman's. Another huge source of information is the Whole Building Design Guide. I appreciate you being part of this event, and I look forward to the benefits that together we will bring to the world using Open BIM. Thank you for your time.
We appreciate your participation.
Deke, Brigitte, thank you very much for presenting today. We have some great questions here. I'm going to ask both of you, whoever wants to start first. One of our attendees today wants to know if anyone is working on getting actual material content of products into these XML standards. So for example, someone could screen for red list toxics in a building plan.
Well, again, that would be the database, a database function really to be able to go through and identify, and I mean, as you know, with Google and things like that, I mean, you can search for pretty much anything at this point. Again, that goes back to the I side of BIM, is being able to get information in an accessible way. We haven't really put the big search engines and the big tools on into play yet. The things like Oracle and those folks. But I do see that probably happening in the not too distant future, that the database side of this is going to get much stronger. And so, yes, you will be able to go through and search. And in fact, as I mentioned earlier, we kind of skimmed over a little bit, but the linking of that with BIM, or excuse me, with GIS, Geospatial Information Systems, will allow you, say, if you have a campus, you could go through and find in all of the BIMs that are on that campus, you can find specific information. So you can find out how many buildings have a certain problem, or or have a certain material in the building. So yeah, that's very definitely possible. Again, probably with most of the database capability that's out there now, probably difficult to do at this point, but certainly certainly something that I think will definitely be in the very near future.
Great. We do still have them rolling in here. The next question I have is, will there be a portion of the standard that will address best modeling practices and naming standards, similar to the AEC in the UK BIM standard?
Yeah, in fact, as you know, the National CAD standard does have some naming capabilities in there, and that's what we're working with, both the National CAD standard and the National BIM standard, to look at naming and not only of files and things like that, but also getting into objects. There's another effort that's going on called the International Framework Dictionary, and that really goes through and identifies terminology. And it was initially set up to be able to say that a lift and an elevator were synonymous. But what we're also seeing, again, this goes back to the database issue that came up earlier. If I put a CMU into the model and you want to pull out a concrete masonry unit, you won't find it right now. So that's why this dictionary is being built. And again, it's international in nature. The dictionary is being built so that you can actually go through and find different things in the database like that. So yes, that effort is underway too.
Brigitte, did you have anything to add, or should I move on to one of the next questions
no,
here?
go on. I'm trying to keep going on the questions.
Okay, no, that's great. One of the questions that were kind of asked before that we didn't get a chance to is someone was wondering if the IFC XML and GB XML would ever merge in the future.
I think, and we've been talking to the GB XML folks, and I do think that at some point in time, of course, GB XML would be a subset of the IFCs, and that's again looking at just expanding that, making sure that the IFC coverage covers all the things that are in the green building XML version. That's one of the problems also with XML, is that there are so many different versions of XML, or so many subsets of or schemas of XML that are out there, and that's one of the things we're looking at. And again, building smart. There's going to be some information coming out very soon. What we've been working with is Kimon Anuma has a BIM XML. And so what we're doing is we're setting up what we call simple IFC XML. And so that'll be something that's easier to use. And again, now, expanding that base to include different green building issues, that's exactly why we need, green building experts involved in our standards building effort, because that's exactly how that's going to come in. We identify a project and build that project to do that. We've got a project that's out there that hasn't been funded yet with Fiatech, and I don't know if anybody's familiar with that organization, but it's looking at a lot of industrial plants and things like that, and they have a standard, an ISO standard, and so we're looking at how that really works together. It actually comes both of those come out of the same technical committee at ISO, so they were meant to, in fact, they are meant to be harmonious. But we just have to work out the guidelines and show people how it can be done. Again, the software vendors play a big part in all of this, because they have to be willing to have the interfaces exist too. In the case with 15926 and the IFCs or 16739, it's two different software packages. So 16739 is in Revit, but 15926 is in their plant program, their industrial plant program. So it's not even in the same software yet. So there's a lot of different issues like that have to be resolved.
I see this one question.
Great.
Here on the there's a question here that's talking about the IFCs on current projects, and this is something Deke and I are interested in trying to do exactly what you're talking about. To start being kind of a repository for some of these case studies, so that people like yourself can go to one source, and so that is part of what the library is trying to do as well. But we are trying to pull all of those in, and so at this time there are some that we have in our own libraries that we can share, but we do want to create some form of a library or something where you can go and look at what these case studies really are showing. So it's on our radar. It is something we agree that needs to be done. And Deke and I collect a lot of them on our own because people send them to us, and I think we just need to start making them not only available, but more available just right on the web. So yes, we see that, and I don't have an answer for you in terms of immediately, but there is an effort on that as well.
Yeah, at least I've been able to kind of, Brigida has helped a tremendous amount because she's also, has the same passion for trying to get this all to work. And as well as we have lots of different volunteers that are, and Brigida's volunteer too, but lots of volunteers throughout the industry that are really working to try to make this happen faster. But we do need, again, the resources to be able to hire some people to work on it full time, and that'll move it along faster.
Great. We do have a couple more questions here and a little bit more time. We'll probably answer just a few more. So if you do have some questions you've been dying to ask, be sure to use the chat box there. We went over this a little bit, but I just wanted to throw it out there to you, Deke and Brigida. What percentage would you say of a project's cost and time frame could be associated with BIM?
I assume what the percentage is percentage it's going to cost to do BIM or the percentage of savings. So let's try it this way on the cost. If you're looking for projects, the percentage of the project cost to do BIM, that really depends on how far you want to go. And I'm not trying to weasel around this one. My point is you can take modeling too far and really not get as much as you want out of it. You really need to start on the lower end of the scale, especially on projects that are a little simpler, and maybe just focus on one of the floors that's more complicated, and try and use it as a tool to reduce your risk, not necessarily to create this whole big model to hand over to the owner, because personally we're not ready for that yet. But I think as a contractor or design, that's kind of the place I'd look. So it's kind of measure of your risk, how much you want to put into it to be able to offset that risk. So I don't have percentages. At Sandia, we do not do BIM yet. It's on our radar, and any greenfield's probably going to have that as part of the, at least won't necessarily be a requirement, but would be a preferred method. Time frame, again, if you're trying to look at time frame, I believe, again, I'm trying to understand if that's time frame saved on projects or the time frame to bring BIM up to speed. Saved on projects, there's quite a few. One we showed recently, the one on in this presentation from USC, that's an example of savings on time frame. But I think if you're really looking at time frame to develop and be into BIM, it again depends on how far you're trying to model. I think there is a learning curve. Most people push through it knowing that that's worth whatever it is to get past. I think the time frame actually is getting shorter. I think the software packages are getting more intuitive, and so there isn't that huge learning curve. And I've did the tutorials. Some of the tutorials are really very effective, and you can do it and I learned how to do Revit architecture just so I know what this product can do. I learned Navisworks just to see what the product can do. I've learned others on my own. But I think there is a learning curve, but most people say, that's just, part of the process of any new technology, and they're willing to put that time in and do it in a time frame that you get people who really want to change. There's people who don't want to change. Don't pick them. Pick the ones that want to, the younger guys. They'll catch on quicker than anybody. And yeah, Tyson, I'm not sure I answered it, but.
I happened to this last Sunday gave a presentation to the Transportation Research Board here in Washington, and there was a gentleman in the audience, and when I was talking, showed the picture of Lyle and the boxes of paper and everything like that, he was, shaking his head violently. No, we don't do it like that anymore. And it was Pat Burns from Mortensen, and when he gave his presentation later on, he said, they are 100% BIM now. Everything they do is BIM. They do all their scheduling. They identify where their cranes are going to be located. They can walk through a time phase of the whole project and show how it works, because it saves them tremendous amounts of money. They don't have change orders because all the problems get worked out before they get into a physical situation. They solve all the problems in the electronic version before they get out there, and they're using it on bridges now. They're using it on horizontal construction, and instead of just buildings and vertical construction. So that's another aspect. It's not just, and sadly it's a bad name. BIM is kind of a bad name. We sat around at the beginning trying to decide whether there should be a different name, but enough people understood what BIM was at that point that we probably that we ended up staying with that. But it's really catching on, especially the more complex buildings, and that's really where the pioneers are. Those are the things that you're going to see those are the first people that are going to make the difference, because they have the resources, they have those $100 million buildings that they're saving significant amounts of money on, so they can turn some of those savings back into implementing BIM, and that will make it then easier ultimately for everybody else. So it takes a while to get through this whole process. I mean, if you look back at how CAD started, CAD took a long time to get started, and again, as we said, as Brigitte said in that slide, that was only affecting one small portion of the industry. We're affecting everything now. So this is going to be a long-term effort, but there's no question now that we're headed in the right direction.
That was going to be another question that I had as a follow-up. I think we'll take this as the last question here. One of the questions we received is, people are happy using their own current software. Why should they invest even more in something than they already have?
It's interesting. One of my job at Sandia is I work with all our design firms and contractors, but specifically with the design firms. And one of our design firms, we have a quarterly meeting, and we met at their office with all the design firms. And I asked them to do a kind of just show everybody what you do, because they were a new firm to our group. And they were going through, and they were talking, and they're a small business. And they went through, and at the end they said, we're going to BIM because it's the right thing to do. I mean, there isn't a question of, well, why can't we just keep doing the way we're doing? It's like, because we need to be doing something better. And it was just really interesting in their small business. More importantly, we have 5 firms that do all our design work, and 4 out of the 5 firms are doing BIM on the commercial side. And the other one firm, the largest firm, and it's a large business, CH2, here in Albuquerque, is not doing BIM. So it's interesting that these small businesses at some level believe that that's just the right way to go, and there isn't a question of how much it costs. Essentially, it's because they know in the end that's the right path to take, because they'll actually get a better return. And it's interesting that they're just grasping it and saying it's just the right thing to do. I thought that was kind of a cool thing.
What we see happening is the more people get involved in BIM and the more they bring in more capability, the better they do. And especially, I think probably the group that's leading the pack right now are the contractors, because they're going to, they're taking the model and they're actually building from the model. They're fabricating from the model. And so that's, and they can go to their CNC equipment and actually, laser cut the steel. They can bend the sheet metal for duct work. They can, build those whole modules that we showed earlier. So there's, the more they invest, the more they, the further they go into it, the more they're getting, the better the return on investment. We haven't seen the end of it yet. It's just expanding as we go.
Yes, wonderful. Well, I think that's about the time we have for questions today. I want to thank everyone for joining us, and especially sticking through the middle of it there. Deke, Brigitte, thank you very much for presenting today. We definitely learned a lot.
Thank
Our
you for
pleasure.
the
Thank you.
opportunity.
So if you have any other questions for Deek or Brigitte, you have their email addresses there on the screen. For more information about green building and design, be sure to check out the rest of Green Building Pro. We have articles, especially this month, focused on building information modeling. And within our community, we have several aspects with our blogs and forums. We hope to see you at our next event. And yeah, thank you again for joining us.